Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Necessity versus Commodity. I've got an amazing guest today, Chris Morrison. You guys might know him. He is known in the online space for his amazing sales coaching, business coaching, leadership coaching. He's built several seven-figure businesses himself. He helps build teams to bring businesses to seven figures faster than what people think is even possible. He's amazingly skilled in sales, amazingly skilled in leadership and personal development and how to get the best out of people. So, Chris, I want to welcome you to the episode and really looking to dive into your brain on how you actually get some of these businesses go from struggling to seven figures so fast and like all the unique things that you bring to the table. So, again, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I'm cool to share whatever. Like I never hold back, you know that. So, always happy to share whatever.
So let's start with your story. Did you start in leadership? Did you start in business? Did you start in sales? Because I know you have a fitness background like myself.
Um, are we talking about business or personal development? Because they're two different things, right?
Yeah, let's start with the personal development part.
Cool. I think from the personal development side, I grew up around some really bad people. Um, Kicked out of school, which isn't like every podcast I listen to, everyone says the same thing, right? So that's not a fucking that's not a special like acclamation of any sort, if that makes sense.
Agreed.
However, I did grow up with a lot of like very, 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 very bad people, right? I spent a lot of time always having to look over my shoulder. A lot of my friends have been stabbed, killed, in jail, all those things. And I think that teaches you something really quickly, really early on. Um, I've had to work for a lot of trust issues because of that, but it taught me really quickly how to read people. And it taught me really quickly how to put myself in a position of always knowing what the right or wrong thing to do is really fucking quickly. And I'm really blessed for that too, right? Because, I wasn't in any way, shape, and form blessed with the care factor, right? Because this is a real
Yep.
thing for true education. I just cared more for like from day one, it was just how do we make money, right? Um, Even in school, I was looking for ways to sell Pokemon cards and all those different cool little kid things. I'm like, how do I make money doing this, right? And then grew up around some pretty average at best people, always having to look over the shoulder and discern like, am I going to get killed today? That was a real thing for a long period of time of my life. And that gives you a little bit of wisdom in context of like, number one, like this is a shit way to live, right? And number two is it's kind of interesting when I see so many people who don't turn the corner from that and they are dead or they are in jail or whatever else that it is as well. And I'm really blessed that I did get out of that. And I thought, I remember actually I was sitting with a friend of mine, Andrew, from, I used to work in the supplement world. And I flew around the world, 80 flights on average per year, selling the supplement brand Muscle Tech. And was at the head office in Toronto all the time. I remember sitting there with a friend of mine who was a co-worker for another company I was working with. He's like, we were really drunk. We were just sitting on his couch at like 3 a.m. And he's like, you should be dead, right? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Fun thing to say.
Yeah, he's like, like me watching who you are and what you do, like you should be dead, yeah. Like most of the people that you grew up with are. I'm like, I guess I never saw it that way. It was just what it was, right?
Yep.
And I think that that was I didn't know it at that point in time, but it was like a pinnacle point where I was sort of sitting there going, well, I didn't think that I should have been. So where to from here? And I remember going to an Arnold Schwarzenegger event 2 days after I just had lunch with him because I was blessed to, in the fitness industry, have a lot of opportunity to be in cahoots with all the biggest and best at high frequency. I've got stories of people that anyone listening to this would know that I'm not allowed to tell people because of fucking NDAs and shit, right?
Yep.
Rightfully so, to be fair. But I remember going to the Arnold Schwarzenegger event, and it was a real estate dude that was running it, and I was sold into a 20K, no, a 5K program and a 13K program, 2 different programs that same day from dudes speaking on stage. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? What just happened? Right? I've never been to an event like that before. And like, I had to find money to do something about that at the same time too, right? So, from me, the personal development journey went from like living in legitimate fear, having a like moment where I could see that external people like, you should be dead. And then I went to this event that like shifted my perspective on like what's possible in context of like I can walk into a room where no one knows who I am, where no one knows what I do, and leave, or someone can leave with $20,000 of mine, if that makes sense, right? In a positive way, not a negative way at the same time too. And it was at that point I'm like, well, I remember looking at the stage, I'm like, how the fuck did that guy do that? Right? Like, what within me had to change in order for him to actually say words that made me run to the back of a room and pay money, right? And something sparked inside me that like on that day, and it was really interesting. It was just like the question was became like, who do I need to become to be able to influence people to want to change their life so much that they would jump from the seat that they're in to run to the back of a room, metaphorically, in context of like they don't necessarily need to do that, but what I would like for them to do is to consider like that immediate internal shift from like 30 minutes ago never hearing this person to trying to find 20 grand to change their life, if that makes sense, right? That was really interesting to me. And since then, it's just been constant self-education, all the good things, until I ended up realizing that most of that stuff wasn't really that helpful. I found like a lot of the books are good for modeling other people's experience and forming new beliefs because of their experience. But what I found for me personally was the worst personal development tool was trying to think that everything was okay. This was because I'd never grown up in anything being okay, right? And I was trying to reject things not being okay. And when I shifted from, because there's not like, it's only been the past maybe year I've been able to like confidently use gratitude as a tool. Whereas prior to that, I've never been able to at all. And everything that happened up until that was like the only tool I could use was the negative, not the positive. And I use it really, really, really well. And I still use it today at this point in time, right? So like everything linearly sort of led up to where my daily habits right now are. And I think that a lot of people would benefit from thinking like this too in terms of personal development. It's like almost most of my day is spent thinking, what would I regret not doing next? Right? Like almost most of my days spent doing that. Like who would I regret not being?
Powerful perspective.
Right? Like and because I think that a really interesting thing that for me it does anyway, right, is for most entrepreneurs who do well, right? Maybe they get to 500,000 a year or get to 1 million a year, right? It's not that an upper limit kicks in. That does happen, but what the worst thing that happens for them is hitting complacency.
Agreed.
If you hit complacency, because for me, I grew up in like didn't have money, didn't have any of that. Like my mom did an amazing job, raised by a single mother, right? Fuck, I've got the same stories. It fucking pisses me off, right? It's cool, but like,
I get it. I get it 100%. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But the thing that I never had was like I didn't have any of that stuff. And most of the personal development stuff didn't work for me. But what did work for me was knowing that negative things usually led to better things for me. The more negative things that happen, the more positive things that usually happen as a consequence of my life thereafter that as well. If I chose to sit in that context. And then every time I would get to and it took me a fair while to learn this, and I'm still it's a daily practice for me right now, but it's whenever I hear someone say that they've got to a stage and they're just like complacent or bored, it's like, oh, they're just not considering what is it that they would, like if they were to die, right? Like what would they regret not having had done, right? And for me, it's like, it's a daily question of like, what would I regret not having to achieve? What would I regret not having have become? What would I regret not having given a fucking shot? What would I regret not having seen through till the end, as opposed to religiously quitting things all the time, if that makes sense, which I see a lot of people do. And I think something that's interesting about that, because it's not necessarily a glass ceiling, but when you hit complacency, I've achieved, like it's the sense of I've achieved everything I felt that I wanted, and now I'm a little bit bored and don't know where to go next, if that makes sense. And that's an interesting feeling for a lot of people who had spent such a long time trying to become this thing, but it's like you get to your goal, and it's like, huh, is this all it is?
Yeah.
Right. So the personal development side for me is like constantly looking for like, what would I regret not doing next? And just constantly chasing that at the same time too. So
You've put a lot of things out on the table right there. And I want to go back to one thing that you said real quick, talking about your past, right? Like we can all say it. I can look back to when I was in my 20s, early 20s, about 23 years old, sitting in a jail cell when I made my decision to change, right? We can all talk about, hey, we've had these tough things. And talking about your shift, right? Like it's so people need to understand this in the online space because we're all secluded, even though we're all socially on a social media platform. Your network and your surroundings really dictate your success as well, right? Like you were around a bunch of friends leading the wrong path. All of a sudden, you get around a bunch of people that are successful. You actually took that step to go and buy from them. One of the things that you said that I thought was really powerful that you kind of skimmed right over, and I think so many people in life skim right over. You bought those 2 programs. You bought them for a reason, but something in your brain said, that guy can do something I can't, and I want to learn how to do it, which was influence and change people. And a lot of people don't get that way. They go to a Tony Robbins event and get all hyped up, and they're just there for the fantasy and fairy tale. I did personal development for 20 years, and I had a very much same experience. It sounds like you did. A lot of it doesn't help because there's no action, and it really comes down to that. And I think your mental shift talking about, hey, the next hour, do I watch TV or would I regret that by doing that instead of finding a new client or training and sharpening my skills or going and working out? And I think that's a really unique perspective. I hope people understand, because if you want to go from anywhere in your life, we've all had really dark moments. I've lost it all and had to start over. Looking at who do you surround yourself with? And I love your regret philosophy, your regret method, because I think you have shaped that a lot. Let's talk about the regret method that you teach people that helps them actually shift some of the beliefs of like what you're talking about. Because I think that's a real key of how you're developing people into not just good salespeople, not just good team members, not just good business owners, but actually leaders of their life. And I think it's really powerful. It needs to be talked about.
Yeah, it's I think if you're going to expose someone's past, existing, or future regrets, you can find out exactly what they didn't become that they wish that they did, or that they wish that they could, that they don't think that they have the ability to. And if you can expose any of those, that's where the next step you need to take in your life is, right? I spent such a long time in people pleasing and giving a fuck about other people because just grew up in such an environment where it was, do or die, right? And then when you try to like get out of that and your normal natural skill sets for it was like hurt or be hurt, right? It's like, what do I become and who do I be now? And I sort of lost myself for a bit, right? And it's an interesting feeling when you sit there and the question comes to you where it's like, where do I regret something that I wish would have had happened by now, that I regret not having had done, right? Because there are a lot of things that you can regret that might possibly be stupid decisions that you've made, right? But what I like to consider is like, what about all the regrets and decisions that you didn't make that you wish that you did, that you know that you should have and could have done? I think a lot of this came from me, and a lot of it stems back to relationships, and a lot of it stems back to observation of a lot of men. And I study fairly deeply the rise and fall of men that I've seen in my own life. They might hit a peak, and they end up in a position where they start a family, and because of the family, end up in a position where they almost put everything that they ever wanted in their own life to the side as a consequence of having that family now. And what's really interesting about that is that the whole idea or premise behind that, in any conversation that I've had with someone about this who doesn't have the same philosophy that I do around this, which is I'm very grateful for, because it just influences my conviction behind it even more, is that everyone wants or perceptively says that they want better for their kids than they had for themselves. That's the common think or common terminology or common belief or common lie in many cases that people do say as well, right?
Yep.
And what I think most people make a huge mistake around is that if you look at history and you look at most family lineage, most sons turn out like their fathers, and most daughters turn out like their mothers in at least a 60 to 80% variable, because they've typically just modeled what they've seen. This is assuming that the family stayed together, right? A lot don't. And the interesting thing is that your kids, your son, your daughter are going to model who you are, not who you told them to be.
Agreed.
And one of the biggest things that I challenge people on in and within this, and that I constantly am in the pursuit of rising my own conviction and commitment and courage to commit and to be convicted in this within my own life, is that you are not the best person for your family if you are not the best person for you first. Meaning that if you haven't gone and achieved the things that you were designed to do, right? The things that you know that you've probably subsided inside you for years now, and you numb it with alcohol, or you numb it with going to the strip club, whatever the fuck it is, right? Like, there's a million different things you can be numbing it with, right? Video gaming, TV, whatever else it is, right? There's things that you've subsided in and deep within inside you that you are using all these different things to numb the pain of knowing that you didn't create what you wanted in your own life. And as a consequence of that, that ends up creating a ripple effect around all the people around you. You and your wife have a bad relationship. You and your children might have a good relationship, but it's based on what realistically is a lie, because you're lying to yourself about how much you actually are happy with your own life.
Agreed.
Right. And I'm really grateful that I got to observe so many people's lives that were like this in my own experience of life, because I got to go, cool, that's definitely not what I want to happen to me, right? And for me, it's a constant consideration of, where is it that if you were to review your past experience in life, is it that you did not create what it was that you know you were meant to do and create because of insert whatever thing that you thought was going to prevent you from being able to do it? And in many cases, the reason that people don't do this is because they're, and this is where upper limits do come in, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear of any of these things that might come into something that would actually, make. I think one of the biggest ones is fear of abandonment, in context of, like, if I become who I'm really truly meant to be, who around me is going to leave me? And then if I'm alone, what happens then? Right? And I think what the really scary thing about that is that if you always are at the peril of fear of abandonment of other people, what you're really abandoning is yourself. Right. And I think that in context of, like, looking at your past regrets and being courageous enough to be able to act on what it is that you are meant to do and be, it creates a whole new world for you. Right. Yeah. And the thing is that most
kind
people,
of reflects one of my favorite quotes.
I'm going to close this, but go on.
Yeah, it actually goes with one of my favorite quotes, which is, that when you die, hell potentially could be you looking in the face of yourself as the greatest version of you and realizing how bad,
How
how
bad you got it?
how low that you actually achieved compared to what you could have, right? And that's a very strong, place of hell to be in for a lot of people. And the abandonment, I think is completely right. And everything that I knew we were gonna have a good conversation because I knew we have a lot of the same point of views. When I was in fitness, even when I'm coaching certain business owners now, one of the things I used to coach, I don't really promote this anymore, but was my Call to Rise program, which was greatness, glory, and gratitude. Living and taking every action as you're achieving for greatness, have every one of your actions show the glory of God. And no matter if it's a good situation, a bad situation, have gratitude for the lesson that you're learning from it. Because if you can combine exactly what you're speaking, that perspective in all area of life, it drives you forward to grow extremely powerfully. And the thing that I love you're younger than I am. And it's awesome that, at you guys' age, you're on social media, you're able to see all of these individuals that are very successful. When I was your age, our phones didn't even text yet, right? So you were limited to such a small group of people, and all you had was your local family. Like all that like you really were kind of this was a small circle. And now you don't have an excuse to not be able to look for leaders that should be able to drive you to want to become that individual. And looking at individuals like yourself and going, oh my gosh, where you're at with your life right now, there's people there in their 40s, 45, 50, 55 that didn't have the network and the ability to look at individuals to understand what was possible. And it's crazy what your generation is going to do for the world because of that possibility. And it blows my mind there aren't more people like you that look at the world the same way that, the both of us do, to strive to become better in all versions. And I think that's something really cool and really unique about where you're at. There's even individuals at your age that are in the online space that don't view it. And I hope some of the sales reps and business owners that are in their 20s and 30s and are listening to you right now are really taking what you're giving them to heart and really taking some notes on it, because you gave a lot of really good nuggets right there.
There are people doing better than me too, right? Which is
Agreed.
so cool, right? I think one thing that I really did learn too, right, is the issue when it comes to dealing with things like past existing or future regrets in that context too, is that if you're like, the cool thing about that question, right? If you, one of my daily habits right now, actually for quite a significant amount of time, is to go for a walk every morning and ask myself the question, like, what would I regret not happening today? Like it's a daily question for me, right? Yep. Now, this came off the back of years of working with people that were willing to give me the perspective that I wasn't showing up as who I could be, right? If you always get people telling you you're fucking great, why would you change anything? Yep. Right? And I don't think when you are thinking about a considerable change of behavior and update of your own identity and character in context of looking at all the things that you have maybe avoided that you shouldn't have for the past possibly decade in many cases. It's really hard to go through and walk through that line through those issues and the things that you have built up this case of avoidance for such a significant amount of time. And this is where external perspective can be really fucking helpful, because it just letting you know that it's okay to be who you really are is a real thing. I think most struggle with that part, and I think external perspective on that, giving people the permission to be who they really are, as opposed to the version that they've created a box or boxed themselves into, is a very challenging thing. And I think something you wanted to speak about was like team building and leadership at the same time too, right? Like,
yeah,
this is how I run my team, right? I always think about like, how can I build big enough to be able to have everyone win at the highest level within the company that we currently have right now, and what would they regret not happening in their own life, and how can we make sure that we can filter that in through the way that we're building our company right now, so that they see viability in this being a long-term solution for them, for the life that they want to create, so that they don't go and look elsewhere at every second fucking opportunity that pops up on an ad that they saw about XYZ, because there's no fucking shortage of them, right?
Yep.
And like, yeah, so this is something that like filters through every area of my life. And I love when I have someone come to me and they say they're complacent, because like complacency is an easy thing to fix. It means you've already been good, right? You're skilled, you have an amazing skill set, you've got good results, you've got evidence to prove that you can do it. Just a glass of them going to break through. It's a lot more fun.
One, I love that you wanted to kind of switch into that, because I think it's a really important thing, because being in fitness for all those years, right? Like, you and I didn't invent push-ups, we didn't invent squats, we didn't invent running, we didn't invent taking action on a day-to-day basis. But the most struggle people have is actually getting their brain focused on the right things, so you're actually working on the right thing in front of you every single day. And if I'm working with a client and we're working on a funnel, right? There's data points there. If we're working on copy, data points. I'm working on building their leadership skills. There's data points, skills like sales. There's data points, and you're helping all of your team members get on the same mission. They know every single day, hey, I'm striving to be better here. That helps people take action more powerfully every single day. How do you see that data point really showing up when it shows their level of achieving what they should be achieving, but also progressing higher up and becoming somebody better? Like, what do you track in those scenarios working with somebody, whether it be a business owner or one of your employees or team members?
Yeah, I mean, our mission is to help men fix the conversation at home, at the dinner table, when wife turns around and asks when the fuck are things going to turn around and when are things going to get better. Like, that's the real core mission of what we do. The way we do that is help fixing inconsistent sales and team inefficiencies, so people can like level up to be the best version of themselves, their team, and be the best leader for their family and communities at the same time, right? And I think in order to do that, one, I need to be the example, and I can't be the warning. I have a we have a very high standard in our team, meaning that like we have a description of what a good example would look like, and a description of what a warning would look like, meaning that if someone is exhibiting poor standards, poor behavior, poor commitment, that's a warning sign, right? Like, don't be that fucking person. You will fail. Everything will go wrong. And you don't have a position on this team if you're the warning, right? And if you're the example, then you get the equal and opposite, right? You are shown as the right person, the right fit, the right this, the right that. And I think that the data points at which we run through in this we always want to, on a daily basis, we are constantly going back to the mission, talking about like how many people, if we look through our client list right now, instead of looking at how much money they made, like, can we observe what the change in their life is? And the way I always look at this is, have they just purchased a new car? Have they just moved a new city? Have they been able to take the family on a holiday? Have they bought a fucking a motorbike or whatever else that it is, right? Like, I'm always looking for the change in life more than I'm looking for the financial remuneration that they're currently getting. But my biggest thing that I'm looking for, once they an actual CEO or owner of a business walks over that own hump themselves, what I'm really looking for is, can I see that same change in their team? Right? Can I see that business owner actually taking the same responsibility and commitment to making sure that the people in their team are the best version of themselves for their family? Their own life journey is being lived up to in the best way that they, respectively can for the current circumstances, and then trying to break through whatever still exists there at the same time as well. And then for me, it's always like, we want to fix money is the first issue, because 49% of marriages across the world break down. The two biggest causes of that are money and infidelity, right? And the biggest reason why both of those exist is a character deficit and a character flaw of identity of not being the right fucking person, right? And if you fix money, if you fix character first and then money, it's a better situation to be in. But in many cases, you don't have enough time to fix character in its entirety, and money fixes a lot of things that would happen in the marriage in the first place too, right?
Or it gives you just time to do it.
Correct. It gives you runway to be able to fix the character deficits. Unless it's too much money. If it's too much money, it can actually make you worse.
Yes.
Significantly worse.
People that win like the lottery, right, are broke like three months later. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. It can make you significantly worse. But if you can fix money, right? If you want an average shit person, right, that can fix a lot of your issues real quick, right? And the next problem to fix after that is, so it's money, and then you want to think about restraints, right? So how do we get you out of tasks that aren't actually useful to you in any way, shape, and form? How do we sell ourselves out of a task in our business that's no longer used, right? So I have 4 key things that I'm always looking at. It's like sales. Like sales fixes most problems in home and in your business.
Yep.
Playbooks. So you sell, you do a thing, you build a playbook, and then hire a team member. So sales playbooks team. The team will then take over the task that you've asked them to do and follow the playbook of what you already knew existed to help make that happen. And then your job then is to build your own new identity for being able to lead that person to whatever success there might be, right? So first thing is fix money, fix sales. Then it's buy your time back by building playbooks and creating a new identity of being able to go bigger by having other people in your organization as well, right? A really cool thing about this is if you do those 2 things, now you have time to spend back with the family or whatever else that it might be. But now you have someone on your team who you need to model the same thing for. You need to make sure that they have their money sorted and that they can actually, depending on if you want to see them as a leader in the company or not, I think that everyone that you hire should have an opportunity pathway to be able to see their career growth in your own company too. So it's like, how do they do a thing and then be able to have someone else follow their footsteps, and they can actually train them up so they can actually become a team leader as opposed to just being in the same role forever, depending on the role, right? So it's money, then team, then team's money, and then team building team. And then you finally get to a point where you now have the ability to actually have enough profit in the company where you can start looking at things like investing, right? How do you look at investing to build wealth into your own into your own family's future, and to make sure that once we have enough of that happening, to the point where you can start bringing in enough invested income or like dividends from investments in your income to be able to actually not have to work if you don't want to, but choose to because you really enjoy doing that, because it's the thing that is your vocation, the thing that you enjoy doing, the thing that you were made to do, whatever it might be. But then you want to start doing the same for your team, right? So for us, it's like, how do we all invest together so we all win together and really win together long term? Because that's what's going to keep people there and really make sure that their futures are really set up in the best way possible, right? And if you take it back to you mentioned earlier, I'll butcher the exact terminology that you used, but it was making sure that everything we do is in accordance to God's highest and best use, right? Now, I think for me, like the best thing I can do is make sure that families are good, make sure that the person who is leading the family has the best character possible to do so, and make sure that the families, the people who are leading those families have something set up so that there is an invested income that comes in, no matter the position in the company, so that there is a future set up for that family and they can build their own legacy together within that company at the same time as well. Yeah. And the way that I do this and like for me, that is the closest thing that, in my opinion, based on making sure that it's we fix the character first, right? It is the closest thing that, in my opinion, I can do to actually doing God's work, right? Because it's fixing a lot of the issues in the home, which fixes the family unit, which fixes the highest probable opportunity for more people to get to heaven, because there is so many different sins or challenges that the world are experiencing right now that are currently happening because the family unit is breaking down as well.
Yeah, well, you just talked a lot about money right there, right? And if someone's listening, money, And you and I both know if you're chasing money, you're probably not going to be very successful. And it's probably going to be just as stressful as not having it. Right. And that's why I think, you talk about your regret method and putting a purpose and a mission behind somebody, that the money is a byproduct of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they go hand in hand. And too often, whether it's a brick and mortar business, online business, sales professional, a team manager, they're in there just for the money, and there's no purpose behind them driving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk, right? He's running from his past and his dad, and he's running to Mars. You're kind of talking the same thing. Hey, run from the regret, and you're also setting up a purpose of what to achieve, which is actually becoming the person you should and how you should be showing up at home. And so you're running away as you're running to. And that's at such a simplistic term. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I can do that. They start writing it down. Why do people fail knowing it's that simplistic? Why do so many people fail without somebody like yourself working with them side by side?
You don't know what you don't know. And the biggest challenge is because you say you want to change your behavior, right? Doesn't mean that you have the skill set of behavior change instantaneously. Now, this is an interesting conversation to have because I don't think anyone doesn't want to change, but change is scary because change has multiple different variables that might come as a consequence of that. This is why sales calls are such a great tool to help people make a change for the better for their lives, because you get to talk about all the different perspectives and variables of things, right? So one of my favorite things on sales calls is like, I think many people call it like consequence questions, right? I don't think of it in that context, but it's essentially a set of questions that would ask, would they regret not doing this?
Yep.
Or would they regret not changing their life, if that makes sense, right? And I think the reason that I care so much for that is because most people don't get the ability to have an additional outsourced perspective that will challenge someone's existing beliefs and fears when they do come up, because they will come up.
So
There is zero chance where the fears are not going to come up, right?
Yep.
And if you are not highly skilled in dealing with that particular fear that's coming up, because like everyone has this,
Yep.
then you're most likely to fall back to the level of your current behaviors and habits. And the issue with that is that if you do that, then the cycle just repeats. And what your unconscious is taking data points every single day on how many times you quit on yourself, which is where people have low self-worth, low self-belief. And every time that you don't do what you say you were going to do, or you fall back and you don't get back up, it's telling you that you aren't good enough.
Yep. Agreed.
And the issue is that if there isn't external accountability or at least external perspective, who is observing what your actual daily habits and behaviors are like, that may be preventing you from actually being able to create the life that you want, you are left to your own existing perspective, which has not got you to where you'd like to be so far. And as a consequence of that, you are left to your own devices and your own habits and behaviors that have got you what you didn't like already. Something that a really good question that that was posed upon me a fair while ago was like, if you were to look around, right? Like, would you buy the life you have right now?
Yep.
If you were looking external looking in right now, would you buy the life that you have right now? I don't think most people would say yes.
Agreed.
But the thing is, everything you have right now is exactly what you wanted. Otherwise, you'd have something different. And
that's a hard pill to swallow for most people, right?
Absolutely. You created what you have right now. Whether you want to admit it or not, you created what you have right now. And you can put your big boy pants on and stop being a little fucking girl about this, right? Because you need to accept the consequences of the decisions that you have made up until so far right now. And in many cases, you have to accept that you don't have the ability to get through it to the next stage by yourself, because there might be a lack of skill. Like I know for me, right, when I was I let the market decide a lot of the things that I needed, but for a lot of the clients that work with us, the quickest thing that works for them to build the character and belief up in themselves is a instantaneous feedback loop on you did it right. That's good. Don't do this again. Right. And I think
Data
that
points.
most people, like it's the data point and the external perspective that is within, like, you know, that same day of being able to get feedback, as opposed to you going and doing something that might take you off course for a long time. A really good example of this, right, is like, I think most people think they do more sales activity than they actually think that they do.
Yep.
Right. And when I can look at you know, a sales dashboard that someone has right now, I can tell them within 30 seconds what needs to happen to help them triple their income in the next couple of weeks, right? But there is usually 7 or 8 limiting beliefs that sit in within that stop them from doing it, because in many, like one of the biggest ones is like, oh, I don't want to follow up with that person so quickly, because if someone followed up with me that quickly, I would not be okay with that.
Yep.
Right? There's so many different things that you need to have challenged about who you are to challenge your beliefs so that you can actually walk through to the next stage that you want to be at, that I just don't see. Like you can't do it alone.
And everything you just said there is what makes you a good sales professional and a good business coach. And it's the same thing that I do. And it's why people change and develop so quickly with you, because that is a hard pill to swallow, right? Like, hey, what I have right now is what I desired. Like, that's a very hard thing. And some people think that's really harsh. And the way that I view it's actually the most loving thing I could tell you, Chris, because of the aspect that it lets you know you're in complete control of everything that's going forward. So if you don't want what you have now, that's fine that you want it before, and that's why you're here now. If you want something different, we need to do something different. And so you can change. Humans were meant to change. And it's the most loving gift I can give you. And now I'm going to help you do it and hold you accountable. And because, like you said, like so many of us, and I think that's where personal development failed me for a long time, is you read stuff or you go to an event or you learn something, boom, boom, boom. But we're not noticing. You said something like, we can't see some of things sometimes. You need an outside perspective to be able to point that out. Like, hey, you know, in your business, I asked you to do this week. It's a simple action. It's 5 minutes a day. Why aren't you doing it? Right. And it could be something as simple as, well, I don't want to respond to that person that fast because I wouldn't want to. Okay, well, we need to destroy that right now. Right. Let's look at change that perspective. And that's a huge thing that I hope
sometimes the perspective is like, in many cases, half the reasons most people don't actually have a good vision for their own life. Right? They've been unwilling to think about what the vision, like, and most people, like in many cases, can't see past the next month, right? Yes. Or like they can't see past the next holiday or whatever else that it is. And this is why most people have a hard time committing to something big time. And I think that something that I've done very differently is that, like, I have like a fucking 20-year plan for myself. It may not work out exactly in the way that I want it to, but I know where I'm going, I know what I want, and I know why I want it at the same time as well. And the thing that I always try to like challenge people on is, like, you said you wanted X, right? Are you being the person that can get to X, yes or no?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you walk down the if you walk a month down, 3 months down, continuing the same behavior, if you don't think about that, like, what's going to happen? Because I know that the things that I'm doing on a daily basis right now are, I can't say guaranteed, but highest probability of getting me to the goals that I want to get to. Highest probability, right? And I also look externally for mentors from people who would help me be able to actually pull me in line, because if I don't do that, then how do I know what decisions I'm going to make if I'm attacking things right now that I've never tried to fucking do before?
Yep.
How dare I try and consider that as something that I try to take on myself and try to figure out if I want it to work out?
Agreed. 1,000%. Yeah, I'm a big believer in you follow the footprints of someone successful, and the quicker you can hire them or have them work side by side with you, the faster you get results. And I love the fact that you have a 20-year goal. because in reality, you could probably get that done in 5 years if you decided to and got around the right people and hired the right people. Right.
Totally.
And that's a huge thing. And I don't like talking about like self-worth, but when you're kind of talking about people that don't have a plan past 30 days, a lot of people tell you, hey, it's because you have low self-worth. If you can't tell me what your goal is, oh, you just have low self-worth. I hate that term, but it does fit in this situation. There's something holding you back, thinking that you can't dream anymore, that you can't think. When we were kids, we were dreaming about anything. I mean, I'm sure that at one point you thought you could be Spider-Man, you thought you could be Superman or Batman, right? You could be anything.
If I wanted to be, I still could be.
Yeah,
don't
correct.
You tell me I can't. Don't you tell me I can't. I absolutely can.
100%. And I just think we get, that's a beautiful thing of the people you're coaching. They got stuck in a rut, right? And they're distracted. They're running circles. They're chasing chickens. They don't feel like they can actually look past 30 days ahead because they can't actually see 30 minutes ahead. And to have somebody shatter that and break you free from that to be able to start dreaming and planning again is so important. And Chris, I know we both have a hard stop here today.
Yeah.
And how we're going to have you back on, and we're going to have to go deeper. We discussed a lot there, but not deep enough, I don't think. Leave the viewers with something. So number one, how do they get a hold of you? I'll have a link for like your Facebook page and stuff like that, but how would they get a hold of you? And then also, what's one key thing you want to leave them with, whether it's about what you do for business, maybe it's something to help them to break and shatter, a mental block or something, whatever it may be. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the first question is like, if you really sat there and thought about it, like, would you, if someone else is living the life that you are living right now and you're looking externally looking in, would you purchase that life or would you not? And if you were to look at where it is from the external observation looking in, what would you regret not having that person change in their life? And don't do anything. Just sit with that. Write it down, journal it, do everything you can to expose what that is for yourself, because it's the greatest work you'll ever do on yourself. It is, full stop. There is nothing outside that. And then make sure that the biggest thing you do thereafter that is build yourself up to be the person who you know that you could, should, and really need to give to the world. For if you don't do that, then who will, firstly, right? But if you really want to not wake up disappointed in the next couple of days, because I know many people do, right? Sit with those, journal on that, spend the next month asking that same question to yourself again and again and again and again and again and again, and start taking some responsibility to look at what can I do today to move myself toward that? And you'll see a massive change in the things that can change.
1,000%.
If there is something that you would like to see happen in it as a consequence of that, then what you need to do is you can go and listen to some of the stuff that I do have out there on this, right? I do have a YouTube channel and a podcast that has a lot of different stuff around that. If it's now that you've figured it out and it's how do we make the money to be able to do that, right? I give away maybe a new asset on how to do that every single week in our Facebook group. So it's Facebook.com/groups/predictable sales, right? So we have stacks of assets in there to help you actually, once you are the right person, to be able to make all the money you want and build the team that you want at the same time as well. But I think the biggest question is like, who would you regret not being if you were being really honest with yourself, no matter the actual fear that you might have of what people around you would think of you if you were that person, and then go and be that person anyway, because fuck them, they're not going to end up, they're not going to try and make you better. You have to make yourself better.
I love that last part. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And Chris, I appreciate you coming on. And if anybody had any thoughts or questions during this, put them in the comment section, because then Chris and I can discuss.
I'll get back to him.
He comes back. Yeah, we will make sure that we're answering and helping out. And Chris, again, thank you very much. I would be honored to have you on a second time.
Yeah, this would be great. This has been fun. This has been a great conversation, man. I'd love to do that too.
Sounds good, brother. Have a good day, and we'll talk
Thank you
soon.
so much. See you, buddy. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.